Hello and welcome to Perspectives on Our Frame of Mind. I'm Jude Spencer and I'm a mental health trainer for the film and TV industry, as well as for the mental health charity Mind. I teach a range of topics such as mental health first aid, mental health awareness and resilience, as well as offering consultancy around mental health in the industry. I've come to this having spent over a decade in the industry, largely in children's animation, having had my own experiences of depression and anxiety. I came to recognise the impact that work in the industry was having on my mental health, and my experiences inspired me to adjust my focus to help educate and empower others to look after themselves and each other better. This has come at a time when the industry is starting to have valuable conversations around the topic of mental health, following the film and TV charity survey, which found that 9 in 10 people in our industry have experienced a mental health issue. This is a conversation that's more valuable now, given the impact of COVID-19 on our mental health in the last few months. This is a topic that impacts us all in some way. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Waldman, Dr. Hazel Harrison, and Mariana Alpha to discuss the challenges we face, what we can do to take care of ourselves, and what managers can be doing to make positive changes in our organisations. To begin with, we're going to talk to Andrew Waldman. Andrew is a comic book artist as well as a storyboard artist for shows such as The Clangers, Doctor Who, as well as co-creating an animated series, Shane the Chef. Andrew, would you like to share a little about your own mental health journey and what you think might be some of the challenges others might be facing in the current situation?
Thanks, Jude. So I was a comic book artist originally. I work in animation now, but I worked in the comic book industry for 10 years or so. And the issues that I had started in the late 90s when, after 10 years of working in comics, working on books I'd loved as a child, the things that had me initially be interested in drawing at all, like Spider-Man, X-Men, all that kind of stuff. As I was having this really interesting career path through Marvel and getting onto the books that I loved as a child, in the mid to late 90s, Marvel filed for bankruptcy and they were cancelling books left, right and centre. And this had a huge impact on me because not only had I achieved a childhood dream by working for them, but I'd made that really, really significant and important with things like Marvel. The first Marvel book was published the same year that I was born. So clearly it was my destiny to work for Marvel. But nevertheless, that all began to crash when they filed for bankruptcy and I found myself out of work. Now, it wasn't just the loss of work that had an impact on me emotionally, but I felt like a piece of me had been taken away. A piece of my identity, a piece of myself was now missing. And I had a breakdown, and I had a year of counselling to help me through that, which was amazing, and got me back on my feet. I stumbled around working as much as I could as an illustrator in any area for a few years, but it just wasn't right. There was still a lot of stuff in the background that just didn't feel right. I lacked confidence, self-esteem, any power to be able to move my career forward. So at that point, I was introduced to a seminar in London, a really powerful personal development seminar, which I took on. And then I did a number of their other courses and ended up being a coach on some of these particular courses that were being run in London. Now, that was a massive breakthrough for me because what it did was it allowed me to reinterpret my past and also my present. So all the stories that I had from my background about why I am the way I am, I realized where they'd come from, how much importance I'd attached to those, and also that they were just my interpretations of my childhood. Like, none of it was actually universally true as such. So that enabled me to reinvent myself. And out of that, I achieved a greater sense of calm. And out of that, managed to move into the television industry and move on a career path that I'd never thought would have been possible before. I mean, to end up working on shows like Doctor Who and Luther and all this kind of was, there's no way I could have imagined doing that when I was younger. I was always a struggling artist, but now it seemed to flow more naturally. So, so looking back on that for this particular seminar, looking back on what were the key things that I think I could offer as tips based on my experience for how we're dealing with the situation now, the state that the TV and animation industry is in because of the whole coronavirus situation. I strongly feel that one of the best places to start is to look at language. Language very much creates your view of the world and your interpretation of everything around you. And that started for me by taking the words right and wrong out of my language. And as soon as you do that, you don't get hampered by the opinions of your own that you get stuck with, and therefore through your opinions create conflict with other people. By taking the words right and wrong out, you begin to look at what works and what doesn't work. And when you map that onto other people and consider that they've got the same thing going on, then you stop making them wrong for having their opinions, and you just engage with it as a view that either does or doesn't work. And that opens up the opportunity for you to be responsible for how you perceive other people and situations. The whole coronavirus situation, it's wrong, it shouldn't be like this. It's not wrong, it's just the way that it is. And when you accept it the way that it is, then you can do something about it. You can re-engage with it and take an action that moves you forwards rather than get stuck. And that's where I am. And hopefully others will be able to kind of engage with that and move forward rather than be stuck.
Thank you so much for sharing what you went through, Andrew. How are you now?
Well, I'm fine. I'm really good because I engage with life differently than how I used to. I decided who I was, and I kind of ran that model for the first kind of 30 years of my life, and it wasn't very good. It wasn't a very good kind of model to run with in a way. So kind of reinventing yourself, and it doesn't have to be overly dramatic. It's just being aware of how you're running on old programming based on childhood experiences, like, more often than not. And so all the reactions you have to other people and your work and life situations and relationships, all the reactions you have are based on that old model. Like, why would I live my life emotionally on something that was created by, like a 5-year-old? It's because essentially that's what you're doing ongoingly. So letting go of opinions. I mean, you can have opinions, and sometimes they can stand you in good stead, but don't be attached to them. I kind of let go of attachment to anything. You can be committed to things, but not be attached to outcomes, because then it allows you a freer way of navigating through life. If you're attached to something, then sooner or later you're going to be disappointed and challenged beyond your means. So now, yeah, I'm great. And certainly with the whole situation that came up around the coronavirus, that put the brakes on my career. Certainly in live action, all live action was shut down because they couldn't film anything anywhere. So I went for a while, and then I paused and I thought, okay, this is how it is. I can't change how it is. How can I re-engage with it? So I started some of my own projects. I got in touch with some people in the animation industry that I'd worked with in the past to see if they've got anything going on. Animation is still running. I've even looked at having a career change because, I'm not a comic book artist. I'm not somebody who only works in TV. I'm just a guy that can draw stuff.
A very talented guy who can draw stuff, I have to say. Very talented.
I'm just a pencil for hire.
Free advert for Andrew right there.
And that's largely just what I do to earn money. Like, that isn't me. That used to be me. I was so attached to that when Marvel crashed, I crashed. So, you define yourself how you want, and that I found that a more empowering place to stand.
That's really inspiring. Thank you, Andrew. Hazel, I feel like this is a really good point to bring you in. So what can we be doing to take care of ourselves better?
Thank you. So I think, as you know, Jude, one of my real passions is sort of thinking about how we can improve our well-being, and, you know, building from what Andrew said, having those moments to kind of reflect and think about where we're at and what we need. And of course, there's lots of things within organizations that they can do too. And we're just going to focus in this next little bit about individually what we can do, but it does form part of a bigger picture. So some of the research around well-being that started sort of, probably a couple of decades ago, into what are the things that really make a difference. The researchers from the New Economics Foundation wanted to find 5 things, kind of like we have the sort of 5 fruits and vegetables model. They wanted to know, can we kind of narrow it down to 5 things? So I'm going to talk about those 5 things and actually what they look like in action, and how we can kind of weave them into our daily lives. And like anything that we're sharing today, you know, hopefully people will take what they find is useful and leave the things that aren't useful, because some things will fit and some things won't. But I'm just going to talk through those 5 things, and hopefully there's something in there that will make people think, oh yeah, or just validate what you're already doing to take care of your well-being. So the first one that we know is really important is connecting with other people. So we know our relationships are going to be like one of the biggest predictors of our mental health and our well-being long term. And this doesn't mean that you have to have loads and loads of friends. You need to have a few, you know, really sort of valuable, validating relationships, people that you can pick up the phone when you need some support and you know that those people will be there for you. So it's not about how many people are in your network, it's about having that quality of connection. And I think when lockdown started, one of the things that sort of psychologists started to worry about was how were people going to maintain their relationships, because we know how fundamental they are to our mental health and to our physical health. And so there was a lot of emphasis put on people making sure that they connect. I think the danger is that it might mean that we're using the same technologies for work and then for social, and then, you know, and you just start to feel a bit zoomed out. So it's finding what works for you, and recognizing that those high quality connections with those people that you have in your lives don't have to go for hours and hours. You don't have to have long conversations. It's just about maintaining that connection at the moment, you know, just keeping those people in mind, keeping that sort of communication going. But sometimes it might just be through sending a funny WhatsApp message, or, you know, a little voice message, or it doesn't have to be sort of really time consuming, because I think we also need to think about how we take care of our resources too. So the first thing is connect. The second thing is about being active. So we know when we move our bodies, it's good for our physical health and also for our mental health. And it's about finding what works for you, because I think, you know, some people love running, some people hate running, some people love Zumba, some people don't. It's just about finding a way to move your body that enables you to release some of those great neurochemicals that we know we need to kind of change what's happening in our bodies and in our minds. So find a way to be active, whatever that is. And if you don't know what it is yet, try a few things to find out what works. The third thing is about taking notice. And I suppose some people might call this mindfulness. Some people will call this engagement. Some people will call this flow. Really what we're talking about is being in the present moment and finding ways to do that, to bring your mind to the here and now, because our minds love to go back over what just happened, or to jump forward to the future, and maybe sometimes to be worrying about those things. So if there are activities that you can engage in where you sort of lose a sense of time, maybe you're just so consumed in what you're doing. Some people find that with creative, you know, pursuits, or with sports, or with cooking. Try and make time for those as much as we can right now, just putting little moments like that into your day. But take notice, I think for me also means taking notice of ourselves and having a moment to sort of check in with yourself, to know, okay, this is how I'm feeling, this is what's going on, this is what I need, and giving yourself a chance to just reflect on where you're at. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing is about keeping our minds active and keeping like we're feeling like we're moving forward. And yeah, Andrew hinted at lots of these things in what he was just talking about that sense of, you know, reinventing, trying new things. So the fourth thing is about keeping learning, really. Whatever that might mean. And I know that looks like very different things for different people during lockdown, but perhaps it is that certain jobs or opportunities that you might have been working on aren't now available, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other things that, you know, we can do to keep ourselves learning, to keep ourselves engaged, and to discover what those things are. Maybe there's something that, you know, you didn't know you were going to love until you have this moment to sort of start playing around with it. And finally, the fifth element of the sort of 5 ways to well-being is about giving, and giving of ourselves, giving of our resource, giving of our time to other people. And, you know, Mental Health Awareness Week, which was just a couple of weeks back, their theme this year was all about kindness and really about giving, for a very good reason, which is that there's a lot of scientific evidence to suggest that actually acts of kindness are very good for our mental health as well as those who might be receiving that. So one way to think about, particularly if we're feeling quite stressed or anxious, to think about how we take care of ourselves, interestingly, is to think about how we can help other people and how we can sort of connect with giving to others. And I think that also maps to our sense of meaning and purpose, and back to where we started, which is feeling connected to other people. So in a nutshell, those are the 5 ways: connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, and give. And those are the things that we can do right now that hopefully will help us to take care of our well-being.
Thank you so much, Hazel. And I was so excited to talk to you that I failed to give a little introduction as to who you are. So Dr. Hazel Harrison is an amazing freelance presenter for the BBC. So you might recognise her if you have kids at home, because she creates wellbeing lessons for BBC Bite Size Daily and BBC Teach. She has also set up Think Avalana with her mission to bring psychology out of the clinic and into workplaces and schools. And I love the 5 ways to wellbeing. It's something that I live by, and I think it's really interesting what you were saying about kindness, actually, because kindness is as much about being kind to ourselves, I feel, as well as being kind to other people. And I think that's something that we often forget. But I love the 5 ways to wellbeing, so thank you, Hazel. Mariana Alpha is an executive coach and founder of Blossom Hospitality. Mariana has more than 2 decades worth of experience in leadership roles for the hospitality industry. Now a qualified executive coach and business operations specialist, she uses her varied sector experience and coaching skills to support companies in developing productive teams whilst creating healthier and happier workplace environments. So Mariana, thanks for joining us. What can managers, execs and owners do to help make positive changes in our organisations, do you think?
So I think there is tons of uniqueness when it comes to leadership, and a lot of different size companies, organizations that have different cultures, different ways of doing things. But and they do create a lot of strategies and plan their great creation of cultures. Generally, I think it starts with each and single one of us, whether we are the owner, the director, the manager, the supervisor, or whoever we are, that we lead people. And it's mostly really whether we're doing it virtually from people that are working from home, or whether we're doing it directly at the workplace. It's really the leaders who set the tone of the company culture, and therefore determine whether that work environment, that culture is going to be a healthy one or a toxic one. From my past experience in leadership of 18 years, I learned really basic lessons, and these are the ones I'd like to share, just because we can do them from home, we can do them directly at workplace, as I said, and we can be any type of a leader in any organization. And it ties a little bit to what Hazel mentioned about taking care of yourself first. The first one, as my tip, is managing yourself first as a leader. You know, the airplane safety brief tells you to put on your own mask, oxygen mask, before you help the others. And there's a good reason for it. So acknowledging and identifying how you are as a leader, first of all, how you're feeling. Is it the frustration? Is it the fear? Is it the anxiety? Accept that without judgment, and make sure that you realize that this is the behavior, this is the mood that you're projecting to the others. And think about how are you going to motivate the people that will do the part. Set an intention to move to a more positive place, and then interact with others, with people that are doing the part to make you successful as a leader and make company successful. So focusing on ourselves first, it's definitely just the start of. And then again, creating time to bond with the team, and for the small talk, we get and again, this is at the office directly, or at the workplace, or virtually. It's really, really easy for leaders to get stuck with just being stuck in the task mode. It's just kind of doing, and just kind of completing things one after another. But how do we really motivate the others? These are the people that make it actually happen. How do we motivate them? I think it's very important that we try to spend moment in their shoes and think about, what are the fears that they might be having about the future nowadays, especially now through the crisis, after the crisis. What difficulties might they be facing at home? And by sharing our own vulnerabilities as leaders, we kind of create the psychological safety for the team, and really just kind of unlock that level of connection and sharing and care. And it has, again, a lot to do with the kindness. We are the leaders who care and who are kind. And that sets sort of the tone, again, for what we do and how we lead. Another one is important one, I think, these days is because there's a lot of uncertainty. It's being transparent about not having all the answers. And this stems from the stereotypical and, in my opinion, incorrect view that managers always have to have an answer. Leaders always have to have an answer. You have that top position, so you have to have an answer. So don't be afraid to say, I don't know, when communicating with others, especially now leading through this uncertainty. And just consider sharing the possible outcomes or possible planning that goes behind the scenes, so people feel assured that there is something happening, and give them the bits and pieces of that. Focus on facts and the certainty first, and then sort of be just transparent about what you don't know yourself. It's perfectly normal. The next one I'd like to mention as my personal favorite is that what we focus on grows. And this applies to negativity or positivity. So, sometimes it takes more effort to actually focus on the positive outcomes. And we easily slip into negativity when we are faced with challenges as leaders. But our attitude is truly contagious to others. And how we show up really just matters and impacts our teams, impacts the whole day of an individual, that can be productive or not productive based on how we show up. So it's very, very simple. Just what we feed, what we focus on grows. If we always talk about negative situations, we really feed that dark mode. So really, to solve this is be a little bit more intentional about our energy, about our positive energy, and focusing on what kind of mood we're projecting on our teams. And the last one, I have to say, this is again my favorite. They're all my favorites. It's something that everyone has read stories and articles and books about, but it's the simple saying thank you. As a leader, this has life-changing impact. The day changing, the week changing, the month changing. It's just such an impact. The neuroscience points to appreciation as a critical motivator across the generational boundaries. And statistics really show that number one reason for a person leaving a job is their manager. So really just pausing and evaluating the moment, I'd say, how do you appreciate people? Specifically, if you just pause for a second, how do you appreciate people? How do you thank them? Do you use the generic phrase, well done, or good job? Or do you thank them when you thank them for their positive contributions or attributes and character? Do you do it in front of the team or one-on-one? When was the last time you told someone thank you for being you, when you're actually looking into their eyes and waiting till they make that eye contact? I used to, in my last VP position, I used to just kind of, whenever someone did, even though it was part of their job, I just sort of said, hey, Pete. And I waited till they get back to me, and I said, thank you. And it was just that pause, that kind of that moment, that in that kind of roller coaster of a day, filled with tasks and filled with just non-stop motions, we just all of a sudden paused and realized that the power of thank you and the impact it had. So I think generally I see managers, executives, and owners collaborating a little more through the crisis, more collectively coming together, moving towards the new normal, whatever that is and will be. And I think there is a nice direction that is consciously kind of promoting the positive environments. And, companies are more and more trying to play the broader role in communities and society, which is a must. And that, again, will be reflected in positive workplace. Making more effort in management of the human capital and their well-being is first and foremost. It's the people that are the biggest assets for any company. And then, focusing on establishing processes to free up the emerging talent and reducing the fear of failure. These are the key components of just solidly living in a healthy, work positive environment.
Thank you so much, Mariana. There's so many amazing things in what you've just said. And it would be really lovely actually to just open this up to everyone. I guess what you just said there, the thing that really struck with me, that we start with ourselves. And I think that's something that kind of is universal with us all that we've spoken about, is that beginning, that journey with us, and that self-awareness and that self-knowledge, and being accountable to ourselves and really questioning why we are the way we are, and how we can make a positive impact ourselves. Has anything struck anyone else as something that's really struck a chord?
I think what both Hazel and Mariana were saying, and what you've just highlighted, that thing about looking after yourself, and not just looking after yourself in a oh, poor me, I need to look after myself, but just also extending that out to, in a positive and powerful way, just being responsible for who you are. So looking after yourself, being responsible for yourself. And I mean, one of the things I remember for when I had counselling 20 whatever years ago, was that one of the things that I was being oh, poor me about was that I wasn't able to look after the people around me. And I was making myself wrong for not being able to do that, because I was having a massive loss of power. And my counsellor, she said to me, well, yeah, but how are you? Like, do you feel full of, do you feel full of self-love? Do you feel full up with all of that? And I was like, well, no, of course not. And she said, well, until you are, you can't, it's difficult for you to be able to give anything to anyone else. If you're empty yourself, there's nothing else to give. So start from there. And it's the same in what both Hazel and Mariana are saying. Look after yourself, and then you're more able to look after others.
I think that's such a powerful point. I love the phrase, you can't give from an empty cup. I'm always spouting on about that, excuse the pun. I really love that idea that actually we need to be full ourselves. And I think actually the self-care is the first thing that goes, isn't it? Like, when we're busy, then, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I will not eat well, and I will stay up later, and I won't do exercise because I don't have time. So how do we keep doing that when life gets busy and life gets hard?
Yeah. I'll just say one other thing. Sorry, I don't want to say too much. Something else that Marianne said that follows on perfectly from that is gratitude. If you can begin to feed yourself by just pausing and thanking somebody else, that already starts to flow back the other way. So that was great.
Brilliant. What about everyone else?
I think your point is a really important one about how some of these things will start to go when we get busy, and we can be like amazing at taking care of our well-being when we're on holiday, for example, and then like when life starts up again, and obviously that, we don't really want that model. I think it's, we don't want to be kind of having to live for those chances of course we all need a chance to refuel, but I think for me, what I feel really strongly about is how we weave this into every day, so that it isn't a chance that we're just kind of burning ourselves out and then refueling, and then burning ourselves out and then refueling. And of course, there will be times when we're really busy and some of these things have to go. But I think coming back to, you know, Andrew's point of gratitude and how we express that to other people and how we build a gratitude habit, which can kind of start to become the sort of circuit that, you know, we get better at looking for more things that we're grateful for, the more times we express or notice those things. But they aren't massively time consuming. You can do that in 2 minutes, you know. So if you've had time to clean your teeth, you probably have time to take a moment and just notice what's working well or what you're grateful for. So I think that's the thing, is people sometimes think it's going to be a very time consuming thing, like, oh, it's so time consuming taking care of yourself. I don't think it has to be. You know, these things that we're all talking about, some of them, of course, will take a little bit more time, but some of them are just about building a habit, making it part of your day, just making it like you would, you know, schedule food or whatever you might do, to sort of start thinking about how you prioritize some of these things. And also, I think if you do notice that your well-being is dropping, having a chance to look at what might have also gone, that maybe needs to kind of be dialed up a bit more as well. Because I think, especially in lockdown, it's presented lots of different challenges of how we live our lives differently. And I know that's impacted on people's well-being. And then it's like, well, what can we put in there to replace that thing that might have gone? So it's always a bit of a movable feast, but definitely it doesn't have to be really time consuming, I don't think.
No, absolutely. And I think what you were saying about, you know, doing it the same way that you would brush your teeth, actually like pairing that up with a current habit that we already have. I've started when we have dinner together, when I have dinner with my husband, we're, instead of saying how was your day, we're now saying what are you grateful for today, and we're changing how we're talking, and actually that's made quite a big impact. And we're talking about different things, although sometimes I have to rein him in and be like, no, you're talking about what you're grateful for, not what you're moaning about today. But actually that can be a really healthy thing of just have dinner and just have a chat about what you're grateful for, what went well today, because we so focused on what didn't go well or what's been irritating. It actually takes an effort to notice what went well. Mariana, what do you reckon?
Well, I think this is specifically tough time, this uncertainty for the leaders. A lot of them have been furloughed, and a lot of them are still making a lot of their employees kind of holding them through the crisis while they're furloughed as well. So again, focusing on that positivity, what is the great thing that happened during the day, and also how do you keep them engaged through these tough times. You know, how do you still make them believe that they're part of the team, that they are and they're going to contribute to the team sooner or later, and just keeping that personal touch and care. It's just very, very important in my opinion. And it's just, as well as you mentioned, you know, Viv, and what Andrew mentioned, and Hazel, you know, digging deeper into what might be things that make you feel better and make you show up in a better light as a leader. That's what we need to be open-minded to, simply as that. You know, I've never thought I will make 12 paintings in 2 months. It's my hobby. I don't even know last time I painted, but I was on the roll. Maybe that was just a little escape from reality. But when people called me while I was painting, I was just kind of, just the happiness, just the kind of, people thought that I don't live on the same planet as everyone else, you know, and you know, reading through books, registering through all these amazing webinars and classes just to stay updated. There's an interesting one that I actually did a course on, was offered by University of Yale, and it was the science of well-being, and specifically it was talked about the art of happiness, and just going through those simple statistics and actually being consciously in that present moment Hazel mentioned, and consciously recreating the moments that make you happy. So if you find yourself enjoying a song and blasting it loud and dancing at home just in the middle of the day, and if you realize that's what tickles your heart and that's what kind of makes you happy that moment, remember that moment and consciously recreate that moment. And this is the same thing that happens with leadership and a workplace. If you see what works, while you're leading others. If you see what works for you as a leader to become that better person, that brighter person that kind of keeps everyone going with the positivity, with motivation, with efficiencies, then recreate those moments. Again, what we feed grows and produces outcomes that we want.
I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Mariana. And I would love to just sit and talk to you all for the rest of today. It's been so insightful, and I've learned so much. But unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. It'd be really amazing to continue this conversation, and for you all to take a little bit of what we've spoken about today into your workplaces, into your homes, into your friendship groups, and just carry on talking about our well-being, because it's so important. If you would like to carry on the conversation with us, there is going to be questions and comments that you can put on the CMC Facebook page. And if you want to talk to any of us directly, then please do. You can contact Andrew Wildman at
andrewwildman.net.
And you can contact Dr. Hazel Harrison at
thinkavellana.com, or if you just Google Hazel Harrison, that should come up too.
Perfect. And Mariana Alpha.
Yeah, Mariana at blossomhospitality.com, or LinkedIn profile is just fine.
Amazing. And you can find me, Jude Spencer, at mentalhealthtrainer.co.uk. Thank you so much to Andrew Wildman, Dr. Hazel Harrison, and Mariana Alpha for sharing your time and your stories and all your advice today. It's been such an amazing conversation, and thank you all so much for joining us today. This is just the beginning, so please do keep talking.